The FIA has been under continuous scrutiny, and at heart is its president, Ben Sulayem, who has created controversy in almost all his dealings with F1, the drivers, and the F1 team bosses. And all of his antics have finally caught up to him, with the FIA president quitting his role with a replacement already in place. Stick around to find out what is happening with the FIA and the real reason why the team bosses were happy to have more sprint races. FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem has come under fire for several issues since he was elected to his current role just 14 months ago. The most recent issues have masked a torrid time for the FIA and its president. The problems for the FIA began at the end of the 2021 season. Let's briefly go through the main FIA failings. The first battle was with Lewis Hamilton and his non-appearance at the annual end-of-season gala that he did not attend after missing out on his 8th world title. Lewis was fined for his non-attendance. And this was just the tip of the iceberg for the FIA, with the next being the issue of jewelry. Lewis, again being at the center of the scandal, this issue dragged, still needs to be concluded, and probably won't be. And let us not forget the battle about underwear during the season, and that everlasting image of Vettel wearing his underpants outside his race suit in Miami. Both Lewis and Vettel stand up for what they believe in. Lewis, in particular, does not shy away from speaking his mind. And to further enrage the drivers, the FIA banned political statements, sparking outrage among the drivers and team principals. An interesting point is that not only Lewis was enraged, but this even managed to ruffle the calm Finnish driver Bottas. You would think the FIA and F1 would have discussed this matter and agreed on it, but they have not quite. Stefano Domenicali has now come out against the FIA, with the CEO of F1 having this to say: "F1 will never put a gag on anyone," says FOM's CEO. "Everyone wants to talk, so to have the platform to say what they want in the right way, the better it is. We have a huge opportunity because of the position of our sport, which is more and more global, multicultural, and multi-valued. We are talking about 20 drivers, 10 teams, and many sponsors. They have different ideas, different views." And the cracks get deeper as the FIA has been at loggerheads with F1 and Liberty Media from the onset of the 2022 season, with the FIA being against the increase of sprint races from 3 to 6. Eventually, the issue was resolved, but at this point, the cracks were beginning to show. A further crack appeared when the FIA announced the 2023 F1 calendar, which upset Liberty Media, as this had traditionally been a joint statement. And there was a further rift between F1 and the FIA over the entry of new teams into F1, with the FIA being a bull in a china shop in its approach to new entrants. F1 had to tell the FIA they had a say in the process. This led to the FIA releasing an expression of interest process, which duly said that any decision would include all stakeholders of F1. And the FIA was then issued a solicited legal response from Liberty Media, which ordered it to cease and desist from commenting on commercial matters which were outside its remit. This prompted a response from the FIA about how they had just loaned out the commercial rights to Liberty and were still the custodians of F1 as a sport. F1 is a complex sport, and the FIA president did come in at a rocky time for the sport. He did have a lot to get right, but when you look at the good versus the bad, he can't continue in his role as the president, particularly when you take into account the allegations of inappropriate tweets leveled against him. And the latest news from the FIA is that the president has quit his day-to-day running of Formula One, with a letter sent to the team bosses saying, "My stated objective was to be a non-executive president via the recruitment of a team of professional managers, which has now been largely completed. Therefore, going forward, your day-to-day contact for all matters on F1 will be Nicholas Tombazis, director of single-seater racing, and his team, while I focus on strategic matters with my leadership team." The most important thing to note here is that the FIA president will still be involved, but only at a strategic level, even though some quarters have an apparent desire for him to resign. The reason for the president giving up his operational abilities of F1 seems strange, but it is a clever move from the FIA to remove the president from the spotlight and to take the heat off of them. The FIA did release a statement saying, "The president's manifesto clearly set out this plan before he was elected. It pledged the appointment of an FIA CEO to provide an integrated and aligned operation, as well as to introduce a revised governance framework under a leadership team focused on transparency, democracy, and growth. These goals, as well as the announcement of the new structure of the single-seater department, have been planned since the beginning of this presidency. The FIA president has a wide remit that covers the breadth of global motorsport and mobility, and now that the structural reorganization in Formula One is complete, this is a natural next step. Looking into the statement, this was always the plan, but was it always going to be at this time? With all the negative press around the FIA, the plan was probably moved forward. There may be some other reasons why. A meeting scheduled for the F1 Commission is due to occur 3 days before the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, which would have been a perfect place for clear-the-air talks between the president and F1. Still, it now looks like the president can avoid this and any potential conflict that arises from it. Various reports have also reported that the F1 team bosses want Ben Sulayem replaced with Dave Richards. This move from the FIA will indeed look to quiet these rumors and hopefully add some calm to the situation. All of this being said, the majority of conflict will still be at the strategic level, and the president is still the main point of call for all these matters. This could be the beginning of the phasing out of the president, but knowing how this has gone this far, we won't be seeing the back of Ben Sulayem for a while. One of the more pertinent issues with the 2023 season is the increase in sprint races. Many drivers and fans are against the addition of new sprint races. Well, that's what everyone thought, but now it looks like there is an added motive for teams. Max Verstappen is particularly against sprint races, with the current F1 champion having this to say about them. "I'm just not a big fan of it because I feel like we don't really race," said Verstappen. "Okay, there's a few points to get, but you also know that you can't really risk it because the main race is where you really get the points. If the current world champion doesn't like the sprint races, you can believe there will be other rivals to increasing the format. So then, why did the F1 bosses agree to increase the races? The simple answer is money. Constructors will be able to use $1 million more than last season after increasing the sprint races from 3 to 6. In 2022, teams were allowed to deduct $150,000 from their overall yearly cost per sprint, and an extra allowance of $100,000 was also given to teams if a car was damaged in the sprint race. In the age of the budget cap, these allowances are crucial to teams. In 2023, teams will be allowed extra funding of $300,000 per sprint race, but not a safety net for crashes. Doing the maths, this will allow the team a guaranteed allowance of $1.8 million compared to just $450,000 for 2022. A statement from the governing body read, "The World Council also approved several updates and clarifications to the 2023 and 2024 financial regulations, including an increase of the forfeit allowance amount for each sprint session from $150,000 to $300,000 from 2023 onwards, and the elimination of any subsequent adjustment for accident damage sustained during the sprint sessions. This likely means that accidents that occurred in the sprint races will not count toward the end-of-year budget cap. This will be a massive boost for F1 teams as they look to combat the F1 budget cap. The 6 sprint races will be in Azerbaijan in April before they feature in Austria, Belgium, Qatar, the United States, and Brazil. What do you think? Should the FIA get rid of Ben Sulayem?